Welcome back to the latest edition of the Omni Talk Fast 5. It is August 21st, 2020, and the Omni Talk Fast 5 is brought to you by Fast Sensor and Takeoff. I am joined, as always, by my partners in arms, Ann Mazinga.
It's the Omni Talk hoedown edition today, I think. Chris is wearing plaid, which I maybe have seen him wear never in the entire time I've known you. And I have a denim shirt on. Emma is thankfully classing us up.
She is. And of course, Emma the intern. How are you?
Good, but I mean, I'm wearing gym shorts as my bottom. So
okay,
am I really classing it up?
Right. Very nice. I don't know. Yeah. More so than we are probably, because I have gym shorts on the bottom.
Dress for your day, Emma. Just dress for your day. Chris and I are apparently going to go walk beans or something after this episode, but who knows?
And I am a lumberjack, and that's okay. But anyway, before we lose the audience entirely on that little interlude, man, I think we need a moment of silence, folks.
Oh, I know, Chris. How are you doing?
It's been a tough week. I don't know if you saw this, but in the retail headlines, Gap has actually closed. Has made the announcement that it's closing its flagship store in the Flood Building on Market Street in San Francisco. I am devastated. I worked in that store a couple days, through the course of my life. I used to take all my Saturday afternoon dates through that store.
Oh my God, you're such
back in the day when I was working at the Gap, just to show them my knowledge of all things denim and
your jean stacks
and apparel.
Hey girl, want to check out my jean stacks?
The worker jean, the vintage jean, the easy fit antique wash jean.
How did you ever find a partner in life? I am shocked.
I have no idea. And I think Mrs. Omni Talk asks herself that question every single day, probably multiple times a day during the pandemic as well. But yeah, a sad moment, you guys. I mean, we've talked about the Gap a lot, but I'm saddened.
I am too. I mean, I made a recent purchase from Gap within the last week and purchased online, but I have to tell you, it crushed me a little bit. I think I told you this, Chris, but there was 15 different discounts that I applied. I think I got $700 worth of clothing for maybe $100. And I was just no, what can I do? I want you to stay around. Gap is my jam. That is I love it. I'm going to be so sad. And I just think this means what we all know already is that it's likely just going to be the first nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I know. Emma, I mean, I don't want to harp on it too much, but does the Gap mean anything to you at this point? Gen Z?
Definitely, I know it's an iconic American brand. I very rarely shop from there, but same with Ann. I mean, I get their emails and it's discount after discount. I just feel bad shopping there because I get clothes for so cheap.
Yeah, the needle in the arm that has become is just insane, and you almost have to just pull it out and start fresh. But it gets to the point where you don't know if you can. But I can remember back in the day working at the headquarters on Harrison Street, and the conversation was actually, should we put a sale sign in the window for the very first time? That shows you how different that discussion is. And yeah, and I am sad because that thing is always going to hold a nostalgic place in my heart.
Do you think 1990s Chris Walton Gap ghost is going to haunt whoever goes into that building next?
I think Chris Walton 1990s Gap ghost haunts social media and this podcast almost every single day. It's like that old Seinfeld line, men just wear whatever they used to wear when they were last successful dating. That's just the wardrobe that carries forward forever. And I probably fall into that.
And are we sure you were successful dating if you were taking them all to look at your jean stacks at the Gap? Luckily, we have a story today in the lineup that is going to be from Gap's neighbor in San Francisco. We have a standard cognition story. They're just right down the street, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, we got some fun stories this week. So yeah, it's a good segue. We've got standard cognition, doing some work with Circle K. We've got stories around, which actually could be germane to this too. We got a story with Lucky and authentic brands. We're going to talk a little Amazon at the end and some of the quote unquote kerfuffle that is their claims against how much legal responsibility they have for items that don't work well on their site that are purchased by their consumers. And we're actually going to start it off talking about just the state of retail in general, because holy crap, I thought last week's podcast was awesome in terms of content. This podcast is just one of those oh my God, there's so much going on. And it quite frankly is really hard to make sense of it all right now based on just what we're seeing throughout the industry. First, of course, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, because without our sponsors and without their support, they are what makes Omni Talk possible. And our first sponsor is Fast Sensor. Fast Sensor is the first AI-powered platform that provides solutions for social distancing, contact tracing, and operational optimization, all tailored to fit your business. With Fast Sensor, you have the tools necessary to monitor safety, efficiency, and journeys across your organization. Visit fastsensor.com to learn more. And we also just did a podcast with one of Fast Sensor's co-owners, Kaylin Welch, their EVP of Business Development. You can listen to that this week. We talk all about active distance social monitoring and how retailers can deploy that really across their operations, both to understand where customers are and where employees are in space. And lastly, Takeoff. Takeoff is transforming grocery by empowering grocers to thrive online. The key is micro-fulfillment, small robotic fulfillment centers that can be leveraged at a hyper-local scale. Takeoff also offers a robust software suite so grocers can seamlessly integrate the robotic solution into their existing businesses. To learn more, visit takeoff.com. All right. Should we give this a roll, you guys?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's get right into it.
This first headline is all about retail and earnings. So first, retail sales were up in the month of July. On a seasonally adjusted basis, retail sales were actually up about 1.2%. So we're on the upswing. But still, I think that number is important to keep in mind, 1.2%, because, man, we had a flood of earnings statements this week. First, let's hit them in roll call. The ones that were big. Walmart, U.S. comparable store sales up 9%. Sam's Club up in the high double digits. Target, this just is absolutely mind-blowing, and we're probably going to spend a ton of time here. 24% comp store sales increase.
Unreal.
Holy Hannah is all I have to say. Like, what is going on there? Then you've got Kohl's, where it said revenue fell about 23% in the second quarter. We're going to talk about that. And then TJX came out yesterday and said that their projections for the next quarter, especially around TJ Maxx, the apparel brand, down 20% for what they think is going to happen in the future. That's what they're expecting to happen on the sales side. So you've got tales of multiple cities there. Oh, and help me piece this all together. Like, macro state of the economy, what's happening at these retailers? Why is it happening this way? What the hell is going on?
I mean, so here's my 2-cent breakdown is, one, you have Q2, which was largely, people having more money than they've ever had in their lives. A lot of the people, who are getting this extra $600 a week. And you also kind of combine that with limited stores being open. We had a lot of stores that were closed still during this time that were not deemed essential businesses. And, you also have to give some of these retailers, I think especially Target and Walmart, credit for, some of the strategies that they pulled together, like effortlessly pulling off curbside pickup, delivery services, kind of rolling that out really quickly and really putting their workforce toward that. But it kind of, I think Q2 is this anomaly in retail that we may never see again. So I think congrats to these companies. They're performing really well, but you also, and even Brian Cornell in the earnings statement that came out yesterday or the day before said, this is a time that I may never see again in my career. And so I think that it's important for these teams to be proud of what they've done over the last, 6 months that have been crazy times, but also not to get too comfortable here. And that's what I worry about, is that people are going to kind of rest on their laurels after those fat checks they're going to get from the stock going up, and then not, continue to push the bar for the next couple quarters that I think are going to be more difficult.
Yeah, interesting. And I think that's my question here, and what I want to get to in this podcast today, as I was thinking about, is like, what are our big takeaways? Like, as we look at this last 3 months, what have we learned? What do we know? What's different? Like, Emma, in your mind, like, what is that for you?
I think takeaways from reading these earnings statements are that the retailers that have focused on omni-channel performance are the ones that are really going to be succeeding in the future. I mean, Walmart and Target, their websites, apps, stores kind of work flawlessly. compared to Kohl's and TJX, who haven't really invested that much in every channel of retail they could. So I think the biggest takeaway for me is that, that omni-channel seamless pickup or seamless performance between all channels is what's really going to make them succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that to a point. I think that's definitely a point. I think that's definitely a point in terms of, I think, some of Target's success, and especially what they're pointing to in terms of curbside pickup and the amount of engagement they're seeing from customers, not only who shop multi-channel, but who specifically use that type of service. Like, the numbers are pretty ridiculous when you look at them. But I think it's also more than that. I think the other takeaways you're seeing, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, I think is, Target and Walmart are just uniquely positioned to capitalize on everything that happened as in the pandemic, right? They're one-stop shops. You don't want to spend a lot of time in a physical place. They have grocery, which is still deemed an essential business. So for the most part, for the quarter, these guys are still open, right? The other key pieces, they sell a lot of everything, and specifically they sell home furnishings, they sell home improvement tools in a lot of cases. People have been spending money there. And so when I step back and I look macroeconomically, and I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's a store manager for Target last night. I was like, what the hell's going on? He's like, yeah, man, Chris, we're selling everything. You wouldn't believe this. And I'm like, why? And he goes, people aren't going on vacations, right? There are stimulus checks, like you guys said. They're eating at home more. They're not going out to eat. So they just have money to spend in different ways. And I think, as much as I want to say, like, it's the omni-channel capabilities of Target, especially given that the show is called Omni Talk and Walmart, there's also a point of it is, like, these guys were just built for this.
Right.
They were built for everything that's come from this pandemic, and kudos to them for capitalizing on it. Whereas you look at the malls and the specialty-based retailers, even Kohl's, that's starting to put out warnings for next quarter too, like saying that business is already slowing down. That isn't the case as much. And so, like, people aren't going to those spots, let alone they were closed. And so you go to a Target or a Walmart, and that's where you're spending your money. And I mean, am I crazy in how I describe that, Ann? What do you think?
No, I don't. I mean, I think there's a lot of things at play here. And yeah, I think you hit on an important thing where, you have a lot of people that are trapped inside. They were trapped inside, and the only place they could go, like, I think about back when I was a new mom, and it was like, Target trips were like the highlight of my life. And even now today, I think, like, I miss shopping. Right. And the one place that I've been able to go on my own where I can actually get in, I don't have to wait in line for an hour and a half to get into the store. I can go in, I can have a shopping experience. I can grab a cup of coffee now that the Starbucks are reopened. And it's like, this is a mecca. This is one of the only outlets that we have. And you add that into some extra money in the pocket, and also, like, the preparation part of it, what we don't know what's ahead. So now it's like you're stockpiling for the winter. You're trying to get ready, and this is an opportunity to do that. So yeah, I think very uniquely positioned.
It's such a fascinating turn of events that's happened, I think. But I think what it does is it does make me ask the question, what does this mean for apparel over the holidays? Like, that is still what I feel really, really concerned about.
Well, not just apparel, Chris, too. Like, what does it mean for the rest of the categories? What are your what
specific categories?
Like, what do you guys think Q3 is going to look like? I mean, are we going to have, I know, Chris, you said in a past podcast, like, Thanksgiving's going to be gangbusters and people are going to just have this, like, crazy Thanksgiving. I mean, I'm curious, Emma, your perspective, because you're back in Minneapolis, like, are you going to go home, and do you think you're going to have this big Thanksgiving, or like Halloween? Is that going to be crazy on college campuses? Are people buying costumes, hopefully with masks? But what do you guys think?
I mean, I definitely think, I think Halloween's going to happen on a college campus. I think I will go home for Thanksgiving, and then I think we'll probably just do it as a family. We usually go to the neighbor's house, but I think it's definitely going to be a smaller kind of event, and I'm not going to fly. I'll probably have to drive that. And so I think that Q3, everything's not going to drop off, but it's definitely going to be slower than usual.
Chris, what about you?
I think to answer your question, I mean, I think the $64,000 question, literally, in some ways, is also what's happening with the stimulus, right? Target didn't say that that's impacting the business. Walmart did allude to the fact that that's impacting the business, and you would expect it to impact Walmart's business relatively more so. So I think that's something you've got to watch. but I don't know that the trends are going to change. I mean, we still don't know when the vaccine is. And that's our joke. And like, we love watching all the webinars, and they always ask
Oh my
retailers,
God.
so when are we getting a vaccine? Like F if you know, right?
Yeah,
Like
CFO of a retailer for 24 years. When do you think we're going to get a vaccine? Who cares what Dr. Fauci says? Let's ask you over there.
Yeah, let's have Brian Cornell's opinion on meiosis. I don't give it, I just don't give a crap. But anyway, like that's still here. So I think the macro trends of we're going to be eating at home, spending more time as families. I think it'll be the biggest Thanksgiving, grocery, and liquor holiday we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Same with Christmas, because people are just going to want to just like let loose in that. I also think like on the home furnishing side, you'll still see people decorating their homes because they're going to be spending so much time in there. I also think small appliances are going to go like gangbusters, like they always do around the holidays. But like all those things you need to cook in fun, new, and exciting ways, since you're not going on vacation and you're not having the spice of life that way. I think that stuff's going to kind of take off, and probably some cool gadgets, for the holidays for all the for all the people out there. I don't want to say men, but for men and women in general out there. I think you'll see that too. Halloween, though, I don't know.
It's going to be bananas. I think Emma's right.
I just can't see people going into stores and buying and trying on costumes. Like Spirit Halloween opening at stores. I just can't see that. But
I don't know that they'll be going in stores as much, but I think Halloween's going to be like a bananas. It's like one of the first holidays we've been able to have under this pandemic where things are kind of back to normal. 4th of July was like, we're not quite there yet. But I think, Halloween, people leave all their inhibitions aside. They put that mask on. And now that the mask doubles as protection, oh God, no, they'll be out in the streets. It'll be crazy.
Well, I don't think we have Miss Anami talking, and I haven't had this conversation, but I don't know that we're doing trick or treating this year. Are you like anyway? There's a lot to think about there.
Yeah, we could
do a whole show on Halloween.
Yeah,
and different
to come.
But man, so much still.
Chris, are you going to be a lumberjack?
I'm always a lumberjack. All right.
Let's go to story number 2.
Are you Canadian based on what you're wearing today?
Canadian tuxedo. That's it.
Out to all our Canadian listeners.
Right. Too. Okay, so story number 2 is that Simon Property Group and Authentic Brands Group are once again the winning bidders and will acquire the denim maker Lucky Brand for a sale price of $140 million. The two in a venture now known as Spark announced Thursday evening that they are set to assume the role of core licensee and operating partner for Lucky. So they'll oversee all sourcing, product design and development, running all the retailer's stores in North America and its e-commerce business. And Lucky has about 175 stores in North America. Let's just say no. I mean, love is not exactly the term I'd use, but I think for people who've been listening to the show for a while, they know how I used to get my tinfoil hat out for Amazon. I'm going to get my Monopoly board out right now for this Simon Property Group and Authentic Brands world domination, because I believe, you guys, that this is like, I called it like the mall metamorphosis. I think this is going to be something that we're going to be reading about for the next 20 years in retail. Chris, you talk about all the time, like every 20 to 30 years, there's this shift in what's happening in retail, and there has been since the 1800s. And I think that this is the shift that's going to define 2020, and Simon Property Group and Authentic Brands are going to be two of the biggest players in the game. I mean, you look at some of the recent acquisitions, instead of the like Baltic Avenue and Marvin Gardens, it's Lucky Brand, it's Brooks Brothers, and countless others that are going to follow. And ABG and Simon Property Groups, they're holding all the paper money. Like they're putting all their little greenhouses and hotels on all these properties. And I think it's only a matter of time. We already know that they've talked to, JC Penney's, and they're looking at the Park Place, and Boardwalk is next, and that's Macy's. And I think that Macy's is going to be the next chip that could fall for these two. And once they have control of, the brands is one thing, but the leases are quite another. And I think that when you are able to own everything that's on that Monopoly board or in that mall, and you can start thinking about unified fulfillment services, unified point of sale, you're changing what the future mall will be. And I think it's only a matter of time. So now I'm going to go back into my underground bunker with my cans of Campbell's soup and let you guys weigh in on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting theory that you're postulating, and just to rewind it for everyone, you're basically saying like these two entities are buying up everything in the mall so they can refashion the mall in whatever form and fashion, quote unquote, they want to. Which is an interesting idea, and it's something we've talked about in terms of how the mall needs to be redeveloped for the future, and we've talked about how that might be what Amazon is inherently interested in too. Talk to different experts. Some people might say you're onto something. Talk to other experts. They say like neither side has a clue in trying to do that, and there's a whole host of different elements at play here. But I mean, if you're saying what you're saying, like it's a massive bet on a massive scale, because at the end of the day, you still have to solve the demand problem too, which is why am I coming to these locations anyway? And why do I care about any of these brands when people really kind of aren't caring about them? Well, you're right. And the other part is like, these brands still do a ton of volume. Like we're talking billions of dollars in annual volume. And these companies are being sold for, I think it was 100 and something for, like you said, for Lucky, and 300 for Brothers. So
right.
I don't know. Emma, do you think Anne's crazy? Or, well, I should say more crazy.
Don't answer that question, Emma.
No, I think I'm really hopeful that the mall gets reimagined through all these acquisitions. So I'm on Anne's train with this.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that what they're doing here? We'll find out, I guess. We will find out. Emma, speaking of like bringing brands back from the dead, this story is cool.
All right. So Payless Shoe Source is back, but without the shoe source. So after emerging from bankruptcy for the second time in January 2020 and shuttering its remaining U.S. stores in June 2019, their new website is live at payless.com. They're planning on opening their first prototype store in Miami, and then they're also planning on opening between 300 to 500 freestanding stores over the next 5 years. So, of course, I went to payless.com, and I was like, all right, let's see, because I remember Payless from my childhood days, going to the dark store that was in the mall and getting a new pair of shoes that was going to last for about 6 months. And I went in with an open mind, and I got to say I was quite disappointed.
Really? Why?
Well, for each category of shoes, like if you go into women's shoes and then you go through the different types of shoes, they have about 4 shoes listed for each category. And they're all brands that I don't recognize. Therefore, I don't connect with the offerings that they have. And then I watched their new Payless is Back video, and the models they use are primarily my age, except they're wearing shoes that from brands that I don't think anyone my age would recognize. And what I thought was really funny was the shoe that they're hyping up the most is the comeback of the K-Swiss, which when I was home, my dad was talking about they wore those in college in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yep.
And those aren't cool with people my age yet. So I don't really know what they're doing. I also don't think that the physical store expansions are the best idea. I really think they should focus on digital and develop an app like Nike has where you can try on shoes with your phone. But yeah, it was confusing, the marketing, and I don't think that they're targeting the correct generation of people.
Interesting. Okay, we might have some different takes on this one. I know Anne's been more in this kind of market mindset, I think, too, as a mom and trying to buy her 3-year-old shoes lately. And what do you think here? Again, and like I always say, it's week 1 of the debut of some of these stories. So I do think we always have to temper, some of what we're seeing right now. But Anne, what do you think here?
I actually had an opposite opinion. I think that I'm hopeful in seeing this, because they're one of these retailers that have been through bankruptcy, and we're starting to see them emerging with their new strategy. And to me, the go-to-market strategy for them looks like we're going in on digital first and stores second. They had, I think, over 2,000 stores before they filed for bankruptcy. And now they're going in and they're saying, no, we're going to do 300 to 500 stores tops within the next 5 years. And we're going to start with a prototype in Miami. We're going to see how it goes. Now, I'm a little concerned about the amount of AR try-on and magic mirrors and some of the other things that they're kind of jamming in this, because I still think that there's value for people, especially at a price point that Payless is at, to going in and trying some shoes on. So I think it's still an experience that makes sense for a physical store location. But I think that they're smart to kind of go digital first and try to amplify that platform for buying. and then slowly learn from the prototype store in Miami and continue to roll out stores based on what they're learning in those locations. But I think that Chris and I talked earlier this week about whether or not what you need to come to a physical store for anymore, and do you still need the Taction and Try On? And I think that we forget that not everyone in the country can order 4 pairs of shoes and see what size best fits their 2 kids.
That's right.
And so there is still a value in having an experience like this where you can get an affordable pair of shoes. You still need them even in a pandemic. The kids still need something to put on their feet. And it's really hard to know this, even with the printout thing that they have on the website where you can put your kid's foot on there. It's hard to see what makes sense by brand when you're not able to try them on in person. So I'm hopeful for what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the one phrase we always used to use when you're selling patio furniture, and why I was always pushing for that business to go online even harder, was you don't really have a patio furniture emergency. Like, it doesn't happen. Like, you're not suddenly like, oh my God, I have to have that for today, right? With shoes, you can still have that. And you can definitely still have that with kids' shoes as well, where it's like all of a sudden the kid's toe is bursting through the front of that thing and you don't know what to do. And you're right, you're on a budget and you can't necessarily do it that way. And the other thing is, like, it's still a pretty complicated process. Like, we interviewed Gen Z, which is technology around size and fitting, which I still absolutely love. And those guys are actually going for funding right now to continue to build out the idea. They're having a lot of success. Where, basically it's how do you get better science around which brands fit and whatnot. And I hear your points. I think it's early. I also think whether or not you have the right brands and marketing, like, okay, those are all fixable things. I think at the end of the day, like, what is the right strategy to figure out how to tap into the need states that people still have around the friction of buying this category. And the other thing we didn't talk about is, Anne brought it up a little bit, is they're going after this smartly. Like, they're starting with test stores and then trying to incubate from there. And they're doing this all with leases as a % of sales. And so they said they won't commit to anything long-term, and so especially as they're trying to understand what works and what doesn't. And I think that's really smart. Yeah, for me, the one caveat I would say is don't over-tech it, right? Just get a solid foundation in place. Even to the critiques Emma said, get a solid foundation in place both online and digitally in terms of the base experiences you have to provide, and then start to iterate up from there. Be more MVP in your mindset versus trying to throw the latest and greatest in magic mirrors and fitting technology into these experiences. Because at the end of the day, you need to solve, the problems that are endemic to that shopper. So, all right, cool. Well, I've got the next one. This one's pretty quick, but some big news out of the cashless checkout free front. Last week, Circle K announced that they will deploy a checkout free test store in my hometown of Phoenix, Arizona in 2021. Can't wait to see that. And they're doing it in partnership with Standard Cognition. And you fought hard for this one. I don't have too much to add on this one, other than I think it's important for people to know Standard Cognition, pretty quiet in the checkout free landscape. Y Combinator, kind of sexy. Everyone's always talking about them, but had not really announced anything to date of substance. What do you love about this, Anne?
Okay, I kind of think this is a bigger deal than we realize. And
okay.
One, it's because I mean, Standard Cognition had a deal with like a Japanese company back in like 2018, but this is a huge launch. I mean, the Circle K stores, there's like almost 15,000 stores internationally, should they decide to roll this out and should this work. The other thing that I think is interesting about this, and I don't know if you guys have seen, I wasn't able to find anybody actually like demoing this, but it says that, they're retrofitting these stores. So they're not putting in new shelving. They're not doing anything. They're just putting in overhead cameras, which means that it could go into like any of the existing convenience stores and future remodels without a lot of investment in like shutting down the store. And if this works, which I'm still waiting to find out how it works, it could be a really big deal and could put them, give them a lever up in terms of competition with, 7-Eleven, who's working on this technology, and even Amazon Go. This average Circle K too is 3,200 square feet, which is a pretty significant footprint. It's like twice the size of some of the Amazon Go stores that we've seen. And I looked at a lot of the new remodels. There are quite a few windows on the front of those Circle Ks, which we know will make things interesting, especially when you're not using anything else at the shelf level. You're just using cameras and running.
Do we know for sure that they're not using anything else at this point, or is it saying
That's what they said in the standard
they're alluding to
cognition
computer
press
vision?
release with, yeah, it's strictly computer vision. So,
Yeah.
and they also say that you don't have to scan anything to come in. So I'm curious how that's going to work. So there's a lot of questions in that press release that I was like, I want to see this for myself. So go on with your bad self, standard cognition. Let's see what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what, and I want to keep the pace moving here, but I guess that's where, like, I think this story is important because the examples of this are still few and far between, right? You have Trigo's experimentation with Tesco, still not fully open to the public as far as I'm aware. 7-Eleven announced their own employee store, but nothing public other than Scan and Go implementations, but only a computer vision employee store. Same with Ahold. AFI has a few smaller installations. Smart Shelf has, an installation. I think it's in like in a retirement community in like San Diego or something like that, California. Don't
Seems
quote me
about
on
right.
that. Yeah. But like there really isn't that much there. And then we've seen this landscape peppered with rumors of, hey, we are going to have this test store at this date, and then nothing ever comes of it. Like I can remember those as back as there's going to be a 40,000 square foot grocery store open to the public in October 19, and then a different company October 18, and none of those have come to fruition. So I'm still waiting to see. But yeah, Standard Cognition's been the one that's quiet. They've gotten a ton of money. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. This whole month in convenience store history is going to go down pretty crazy. Dash Mart, this example. There's just a ton happening in this space.
And GoPuff.
Yeah, Cody and GoPuff. Yeah, lots of stuff. All right, Ann, why don't you bring us home?
All right, last story. So an appeals court in California has ruled that Amazon can in fact be liable for third-party sellers' defective products after a woman in California purchased a laptop battery from an Amazon marketplace vendor that arrived in Amazon packaging and later caught fire and caused her third-degree burns. So Amazon plans to appeal the decision, saying that the court's decision was wrongly decided and is contrary to the well-established law in California and around the country that service providers are not liable for third-party products they do not make or sell. Thoughts?
Do you agree with this? Emma, do you agree with this? Do you agree with Amazon's position, or how do you think about this?
Responsible for knocking those third-party sellers that have defective products. They should knock them off the website. But I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that Amazon should be directly responsible for a third-party seller's defective product.
Why? Just for you as a consumer, why?
That just makes sense in my head. Amazon didn't make the product. They didn't directly sell the product to a consumer. The third-party vendor did, and therefore they shouldn't be responsible for something they did not make.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. Ann, what do you think?
So, Chris, you and I talked about this, and we're saying the analog here, if you're looking at Amazon strictly as a retailer, would be if something is defective at a Target that I bought at a Target or a Walmart, they would be responsible for pulling that off the shelf. So if I return the product or something happened, Target or Walmart's responsible.
Because they're the seller, quote unquote.
Correct. Now, I think that I'm going to, well, go ahead, Chris. You say what you
sure? I know.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is a quite a quote unquote, close your ears, everyone. I think it's a bullshit argument. I really do. I mean, I think, Amazon, you're taking the consumer's money. You're playing in the gray area of a technology and a transaction that just hasn't existed before in the scope of the law, in my opinion. You are, let's call it what it is. You are still the retailer in this equation. And your point about Target's right. I mean, I used to run the Baby area, and I can remember all the product recalls that were happening and how I personally felt responsible when, a crib didn't work well or a baby seat didn't work well. And we had to get that stuff off the shelf. To say you have no responsibility in this whatsoever, I just don't agree. Because the analog of basically what's happening here, if you stop and think about it, is, yes, it's a marketplace arrangement. It's a third-party seller. Well, I could have a physical store. Let's use a Target banner again. I could use a Target banner, and I could have a physical store, and I could have a scan and go operation. And basically Target's running the point of sale for everything, but the actual seller of that product on that shelf happens to be the third party vendor, but everything else is actually procured by Target. How would you think about it in that situation? Because that's exactly what's happening here. And so I don't see the dichotomy. I think these are arcane rules. They're saying they're a services provider. That's what Amazon is. Baloney. That's something completely separate, in my opinion. What do you think?
I'm going to play devil's advocate here and
Okay.
wonder what happens if we know Walmart's marketplace, Target's going into a marketplace. If marketplaces become the next direction that all of these retailers are going in, and this becomes a wider, more widely adopted way of shopping and running your retail business, will they have to move to this model where it's, look, buyer beware? And I think the thing that I would compare it to is almost like buying something on Facebook Marketplace. Do you hold Facebook responsible for the bike that you bought on Facebook Marketplace if it breaks? No, that's something that you expect when you're buying something at a value. And I think that's what Amazon's doing here. You're buying a cheaper version of the product. And when you're, for the amount of work that it would take as we get to be bigger marketplaces, like for that financial investment, if that increases the prices of products on the marketplace, does that change for buyers? Are buyers saying like, nope, you know what? I don't care. I'd rather have a cheaper product and take my chances with it and, have me be the one that's responsible for whatever could happen with it because I chose the cheaper product. Are people willing to pay that premium for this kind of capability, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're in a whole host of consumer protection gray areas here when you're talking about the differences between a multi-billion-dollar retailer like an Amazon, Target, Walmart, a third-party marketplace, and a coordinated transaction between two individuals, on Facebook or Craigslist. And there's a whole host of different things that go on, within that scheme. And also, how is the transaction actually being handled, I think, is an important part of that in terms of like the Facebook transaction. Is Facebook taking that money and acting as as the quote unquote retailer? Some cases, yes. Some cases no.
Yes.
It depends on who it is.
As we increased Facebook shop and Instagram shop, I think that's going to start to come into play.
Exactly. Depending on how third party that is. Right. Mm-hmm. But like, I think there's just so many gray areas here. And if anything, I think it speaks to the fact that the laws are not keeping up with this, and the laws haven't been keeping up with a lot of things for a long time in regards to tech. And that's been in the media a lot, but I think this is another great example. And I think that personally, this example is this excuse from Amazon is hard for me to swallow for those reasons, because I could actually legitimately see a physical store operating that way and wouldn't be surprised if that's actually isn't already in Amazon's purview. And I've already seen other companies talk about trying to set up physical marketplaces too. So like, I don't think any one of us would go into a physical marketplace and say, buyer beware on anything that might burn my house down.
Oh yeah. Let's be clear. We're hoping that everybody
especially
is buying safe
name,
products.
Yeah, right. Especially with a name like one of those companies behind it. So,
right.
All right. On that note, that was a fun show. We got into a lot of fun topics, a lot of good chuckles today. I hope everyone has a really awesome weekend. School's gearing up. Emma, you're like back at school. You're going to start school. What's going on?
September 8th is the first day of classes. However, don't know anything about what I'm taking, if I have to go to campus, the usual.
So definitely stick around and listen to us in Omni Talk, because you can hear all the travels and travails of Emma as she tries to start up her graduate school program at the University of Minnesota. Ann and I will be holding down the fort as always on Omni Talk. Again, we've got some cool announcements coming your way, hopefully here in the next few weeks. As always, remember to like, review, and subscribe to our podcast, and listen to our podcast and our videos on YouTube or wherever you happen to listen and watch your favorite podcasts and videos. Every little difference makes a difference to us. And as always, be careful out there.